this force right here is what keeps the person from falling while he's standing on the ground. Right now I have a normal force acting up on me that keeps me from falling into the second floor. If the ground gave way and I was still touching the ground, so let's say the classic cartoon that, there's a big hole here and this whole section drops, there's still a normal force for to some extent between me and what I'm standing on. It's not enough to keep me from falling. All right, so we also talked about person 2 and the pole. Which way is that normal force pair going?
Angle?
Yeah, it's perpendicular to the surface of contact. He's pushing on the end of the pole here, as you can tell in my absolutely spectacular drawing. He's pushing on the pole, so it's going that way on the pole. I'm going to call this YP2, and then that way on the person. Yeah, if you can break yourself of feeling like it's always up and down, that will serve you better in the future. Also want to point out, I didn't actually draw YP2 on the person itself. I drew it in that vicinity, and I think it's clear in this drawing that this is associated with this person. When you're drawing it, ideally it'll be touching the object. It's touching the object that is upon which it's acting. But in something like this, it's clearly acting on him and not the pole here. Just try not to draw it in the middle where I can't tell which way it's going, on which object it's acting. The no man's land. Seen that way too many times. All right, so we got 2 down, several more to go. The requirement of contact. So just think about objects that are touching.
The wall of the second person.
Okay, which way is it acting on the second, or on this person?
To the right.
Yes, it is. It's perpendicular to contact, and it's a pushing force. Normal force is a pushing force. It's what's keeping him from going through, shooting off to the left. So Y1. And the other part of that pair? It's this normal force here acting on the wall, which is going to leave your footprints, which potentially would get my mom yelling at me for putting dirty footprints on the wall. And for the record, I have no memory of her ever getting mad at doing that, but I'm willing to bet that at some point I did do that and she got mad at me. Dad would not have gotten mad at me because he was emotionally stunted. All right. Next.
Top of the pole. Acting on the first person.
All right, which direction is acting on the first person?
Diagonal again on their back.
YP1? Yeah, because that's YP2. All right, just a couple more to go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more pairs of normal forces.
The walls,
And,
the ceiling.
okay, yep, the ceiling is being held up. So which way is it acting on the wall?
Top.
So I've got a normal force like that.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. Call this Y sub L, and pushing up on the ceiling, Y sub L. Over there, it's gonna look a whole lot like it. Y sub R, or Y sub R. So, what you doing?
The wall in the ground,
Yep, which way is it acting on here?
ground is pushing up, wall is pushing up.
So Y sub R, Y sub R. Oh, I need a different subscript. Y R, it's called RG. Y L G. All right, 3 pairs to go. And once you see one of them, you'll see the other 2 easily.
Pulleys,
Yes. What's the pulley touching?
the rope,
Yes. There's a normal force there. This rope doesn't bend like this normally. There's something doing that. So which way is it acting on the rope? How about right here? Which way is the normal force acting here? I assume Dylan.
I'm trying to think.
Okay.
I think it'd be diagonal again, but.
I was thinking it was diagonal or to the left.
Yeah. If this pulley suddenly disappeared, what would the rope do?
It would,
hold it.
Just swing in.
drop it to
It goes, it's probably at that angle right there. It won't want to fall, but there is some tension there, so it's gonna swing. So it's pulling this way. I'll call this Y. I'm already using a YR, aren't I? Either YRG, YR. I got a P2 for pole, two things that don't start with the same letter. I'm gonna call this YR2. Which way is it acting on the pulley? I'm seeing some gestures in that direction. YR2. Now I do appreciate, because some people will do the pen, and sometimes, and I didn't see it this time, so thank you. Sometimes I'll see people with a pen like this, and they'll be pointing, it's going in this direction. And I'm thinking, all right, which way are you pointing? Because it's not always the direction of the tip that people are pointing in. All right, so there's one, obviously. What are the other 2 pairs?
the other pulley.
Now, I don't know exactly the direction here or here. All I know is that the rope is touching the pulley from, so if I have a pulley here, the rope this is touching here to here. So the net force is somewhere in this range here. I just generically draw it in that direction. I'd have to give you more detail to know the exact direction of it. So it's somewhere in that general direction. YR3, YR3, and then over here, YR1, YR1. And so we got person pole, person wall, person ground. Wall, ground, wall, ceiling, wall, ground, wall, ceiling. Rope pulley, rope pulley, rope pulley. I think that's all we've taken care of everything that's touching. So let's deal with that low-hanging fruit of O. Other. Is there any other? Where is it? Someone be bold.
No, because nothing was stated.
Right on. I sort of was hoping somebody would have just picked that off very early, but that's okay. We waited. You gave Sarah a chance to do it.
I had a question about normal force. I think it's
Yep.
just, the pulleys are tripping me up because I know normal force pushes away like this way, but visually they look like they're going this way.
Yeah, and this is, some students have that issue because the rope is actually on this side of the pulley.
Okay.
So
okay.
even though I drew it like this piece is actually here.
Okay,
It's just
thank you.
hard
That
to
makes
draw.
sense. Got it.
All right. Any other questions before we tackle friction? Because Olivia's been chomping at the bit to get friction. All right, let's make our dream come true. Friction. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to do friction last is friction can get complicated, but at the same time, we also have big hints here because friction has to exist somewhere where there's a normal force. A normal force is a requirement for friction. So if we know where all the normal forces are, we've narrowed it down into anywhere friction possibly could be. So, now just because there's a normal force doesn't mean there's friction. For instance, where the pulleys are, how do I know there's no friction where the pulleys are?
Rope has no mass. The rope doesn't have a mass?
I would take it one step further, the rope is ideal. And frictionless is one of the aspects of that. If you have friction without a mass, probably at that point it's no longer called friction. All right, I'll buy it. No mass. As Roberto Duran said to Joe Raylander, no mass. Don't understand the reference.
The boss?
Yeah. I'm dealing with the younger crowd. So remember the first time I talked about an LP in class and I had a student go, what? LP is record players. How many of you have listened to an actual vinyl record? All right,
They're coming back.
excellent. Sorry, getting this out and tripping my head. All right, so friction. Let's just take one pair. Let's take person 2 and the ground. I got a normal force pair there. Is there any friction acting there? Imagine you're pushing this pole to try to get this guy up.
There's.
Okay, so we're going with yes, and you're going.
Yeah, I was gonna say you against the ground. I mean, if you're
Okay.
pushing against the ground here.
Thought you were taking the next step in the direction. What helps me in doing this is I imagine if the ground is frictionless, what would this foot do?
So it's
Which way? So which way is friction acting?
This one.
Left.
So friction's acting in this direction, and so what is the other part of that pair? Now, there are a number of people when you're especially dealing, this is a far more complicated one, which I think causes people to pause for a moment. But if you look at the man pulling sled or man pulling boy on sled, that a lot of people think, well, if the person is accelerating that way, isn't friction opposing that movement? But it's not the person, it's the foot. The friction's at the foot, not at the middle of the person. Just as a visual here. What can I potentially rip? So imagine as I step forward, think about the calendar that my foot is on. As I step forward, the calendar gets kicked backwards because the friction on the ground is that way. The friction on my foot is this way. All right. So that normal force pair taken care of. What about this normal force? I want to come back to that one. Let's go with this one. If his back were frictionless, what way would the pole go?
Would slide up.
Because there's the evolution line? I think I'd agree with that. In the original problem, I actually stated which way it would slide if it were frictionless to end that part of the debate. But let's go with Dylan's interpretation. So if the pole would slide that way, which way is the friction acting on the pole? F1. And therefore, the other part of that pair?
Against the person.
Another pair taken care of. What about his feet and the wall? He's trying to walk up the wall. Acting up on which one?
His feet.
So F, because again, he's pushing backwards with his foot. So F1 and then F1. All right, so we got both there. Oh, so now we're down to here. So if the top of the pole is going to slip that way, I'm trying to picture, I'm pushing on a pole, it wants to flip that way. So if that pole wants to flip that way, what is this side doing here?
Opposite.
Going towards the wall.
So this wants to slip this way? Let's see. So as I push on it, if this wants to slip that way, this wants to slip down. So which way is the friction acting on this?
This way.
Uh,
It's acting against it. The pole wants to go this way, so it's acting.
Could you do that motion again, but face that way?
Oh.
So it's like the same as person one.
Is there a meter stick in here? Jess is good, a marker. All right, so we had it pictured so that this wants to slip up. So if it's like that and this is going to slip up, think about the bottom of the marker, it's wanting to slip down.
So friction would go the other way.
Yes. There we go. So this wants to slip down, so friction would be acting that way. The trouble, Dylan, you're pointing horizontally, and friction is parallel to the surface. I don't think I wrote that when I was setting up the chart, but the friction is going to be parallel to the surfaces of contact. And so, and perpendicular to the normal force. So FP2. And then cram this one in here. FP2. Now, one of the things I've done here is I've sort of done one of the rookie mistakes of not giving myself enough room. Another note, in the actual test problem, I talked about which way this thing would slide. So. All right, so we got friction here, 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 here. We had friction, we don't have friction at the pulleys. Is there another normal force pair we've ignored? Oh, ceiling, wall, and wall ground. I'm going to assume that the ceiling is sitting on the walls. Thus, we have that normal force there as opposed to somehow wedged in there. I think that's pretty a bad design if you had a wall or had a ceiling that was sort of wedged there and being held up by friction. So I am going to assume there's no friction here or there or here. And I assume the walls are sitting on the ground as opposed to somehow held in by friction.
So you said friction occurs in places where there's a natural force, but not every natural force.
Normal.
That's
Normal
what
force.
I said.
Yes, yes. You will not have friction without normal force there.
Okay.
I think we're done. A test level problem. Again, if you have not watched the videos where I start out with blocks falling, working my way up to a more complex problem, yeah, you'll need to watch those presumably after the test on Thursday. Any questions? All right, I'm going to, why don't we take a pause here, stretch legs, just sort of calm down after the excitement of doing a force diagram problem. So labs are due in the traditional 16 weeks scenario, next time we have lab, but since Thursday is a test, the lab's not due on the day of the test. Now, if you have it done by then, great. And I do recommend at least you've gone through it because it'll practice the projectile motion. But officially it would be due